What is going on, everyone? Man, it's good to see you all here with us tonight and want to go ahead and get started and be respectful of you all's time. First of all, appreciate you all being here. We're going to go ahead and get into it. All right. Tonight, we're going to be talking about manning your recovery. Manning your recovery, the 7 steps to porn recovery for millennial men. A little bit about me. My name is Jay Bryan, and I'm with Millennial Man Porn Recovery. And um, I've been in recovery for my I am in recovery myself. Um, Started this company to reach back. I'm on a mission to help millennial men like myself to recover from porn addiction so that they can live their best life. They can live as their best self. So that is my goal. And that's the point of these events, right? Just to give the information that really helped me to overcome this issue that we're dealing with. So, so you all welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, first and foremost, I want you to imagine that you're a a child. So let's say you're maybe, let's say 8 or 9, right? And you are you have a CD player. You're familiar with the floppy disk. Maybe your parents have a computer in the home. Maybe that computer uses floppy disks to save data or pull data up. Maybe it started to, maybe they use CDs. Maybe you like to watch cassettes, video cassettes on VCR. You know, the ones you have to rewind and make sure they're ready before you can play them for yourself. I mean, and and now I want you to picture, let's say maybe 4 or 5 years after that. Okay, maybe 4 or 5 years later, and you're a preteen now. So maybe you're 12 or maybe 13. Maybe you're an early teenager, and you start to see things like tube sites pop up, like YouTube and things like that. The internet is really big, and it's starting to get bigger around the world, but you don't really know what's coming, right? Because the internet is relatively new at that time. Okay. Now, does that sound like any of you that are watching this? Does that sound like your childhood? That's the story of many millennial men. I can't put an exact number on it, but many millennial men, right? Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, what's the problem there, Jay? So, yeah, I was around during that time. Well, that deals directly with how we ended up at the point we're at now with pornography. It directly ties in to where we are today. Millennial men, specifically, or millennials, period, but I'm talking to my millennial men here, grew up before and after the explosion of tube sites from 2005 onward. Now, check this out. Back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I mean the 60s, 70s, and even later than that, even before that, actually, there was pornography. There were people who would get naked. They would take off their clothes and just for show, for someone else's viewing pleasure, right? However, watching or viewing pornography really didn't blow up. It really didn't get big until 2005. Now, you may be wondering, well, what happened in 2005, Jay? Well, in 2005, that is when YouTube was founded. YouTube. And when other companies saw that YouTube was out, a site where you could put up video after video after video, and a consumer could watch them when they wanted. Guess who latched on to that model? That's right. Companies that produce pornography. As soon as YouTube came out, that's when tube sites as a category began to blow up, including pornography tube sites. And that is why that, my friends, is one of the main starting points of where many millennial men are today. Because how old were we in 2005? I'd say we were teenagers, most likely, maybe early 20s. Some of the older millennials, some of the younger ones were maybe early teens or preteen. This is what happened, right? So let's look at what the numbers say. And the source of this is available upon request. If you want the exact article, I actually have it pinned and ready to go for my notes. But let's look at this. Porn dependency and addiction are only growing with each generation. In January 2016, the Barna Group found that 25% of older millennials, 38% of younger millennials, and 26% of Gen Z went looking for porn several times a week. This is compared to just 9% of baby boomers and 23% of Gen Xers. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a problem, and it is specifically a problem that is plaguing all generations, but it's really hitting us as millennials hard if you look at the numbers. So what can we do? You may be thinking to yourself, okay, I see this, but how does this help me? I'm a millennial man struggling with a pornography addiction. How can this is the problem, Jay. I see that, but how does this help me recover? Well, here's the problem, everyone. We've talked enough about the problem. So what can we do as millennial men about that problem? How do we move forward from this? And the answer is we recover. We recover. That's how we move forward. We overcome this problem, and if you choose, not that you have to, but if you choose, each one teach one. We help other people. It doesn't have to be a fellow millennial. It could be someone else who's struggling with it. Each one teach one. And that's what we're going to talk about. How does a millennial man recover? We're in the depths of this, struggling with it. It's affecting our lives negatively. What do we do? And that's where this 7-step recovery process comes in. This is where it comes into play. The 7-step porn recovery process. Now, these steps are, I'm not the originator of taking these steps. They can be found throughout several different sources of recovery material, through programs I participated in. But these are the things that have worked for me, and I want to pass them along to you. This is not a paid event. This is not for me to make a quick buck off you. This is to pass along what are the steps, step by step, what worked for me. And I've simplified this so that it should work for you as well. So as we begin to go through this discussion on this process, there are going to be times where I stop my sharing and I give you some time to write. And I'm only going to give a minute to write. Now, I'll cut on some music and, let you vibe a little bit to the music, but I'm only giving you a minute to write. Now, why is that? Because there's something called the planning fallacy. All right. And I'm not going to get too into the psychology of it and things like that. But basically, if there is 2 hours allotted for something, we can do it in 2 hours. And there are other names for this too, besides the planning fallacy. If there's 2 minutes for something, we can do it in 2 minutes. Well, what if there's 1 minute for something? Guess what? Many people can make it happen in 1 minute. They'll be going as quick as possible, but they can do it. So I'm giving 1 minute. Now, if you need additional time to write something, please, you can take it after we're done tonight. Okay? You can take that time, write what you need to write down, and keep it going. All right, there will be a recording of this entire class posted at a later date. Of course, your identity will be kept confidential, okay? But there will be a recording of this. So if you need to reference it again, you got it. You got it. So let's get into this process. The first step, the first thing we need to do is you want to first and foremost determine, do you have an addiction? Now, I have a master's degree in addictions counseling. And it's crazy because there are specific criteria to not only determine if someone has an addiction to anything or not, but also how severe that addiction is if they even have one. So when it comes to a pornography addiction, the first thing we want to do is figure out, do you even have an addiction? Because if you do not, there's no reason to delve too much into this and too much more. In fact, you could turn off the video now because there's no need to go through the rest of the steps if you don't have an addiction. Now, let me explain what an addiction is, simple version. An addiction is something that there's two main things that can say that something's an addiction. Number one, you can't quit when you try. You keep trying to quit, you cannot quit it. Number two is having a negative effect on other areas of your life besides the addiction itself. So sure, you might be getting a good feeling from watching pornography or masturbating and ejaculating, things like that. However, it may be affecting your relationship with your significant other or your spouse. Maybe it's affecting how well you parent. Maybe you're very tired and experiencing brain fog. Maybe you're really irritable, mad a lot. Maybe you're ashamed, right? It affects your social life. You don't want to go out and talk to people because you really deal with this issue behind closed doors. So those are some examples of this addiction messing with other parts of your life. So you want to ask yourself those two questions, okay? Number one, is this negatively affecting other parts of my life? Yes or no? And then number two, because if it is negatively affecting other parts of your life, you want to come to the other question, which is, can I just quit? If you can just quit, quit. And you want to quit, quit. Quit. But if you've tried to quit and you've been trying to quit and you cannot do it, you can't seem to get this problem, this issue out of your life. Well, guess what, my friends? This may be an addiction. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that you're going to be an addict forever, nor do I call people I work with addicts, nor do I hope, I can't make someone do something, but nor do I hope that they don't want to be called an addict, because this can be overcome. I'm in the process of doing it. I'll just say dozens. I don't want to over exaggerate or over skew numbers. So I'll just say dozens of men have overcome it. You can't overcome this. But the first thing you have to do is determine, do you even have an addiction? Your second step, if you do determine that you have an addiction to pornography, is to put up the wall. Put up the wall. Now, if you ever watched a war movie or a movie about, especially some of those, I guess, medieval movies where they laid siege to castles and things like that. I know there was a movie about like the Great Wall of China a few years ago with, I think, Matt Damon or something. But on those movies, sometimes people try to climb a wall, right? There's a wall, it's to protect people or protect the people inside. They try to climb or break through sometimes the wall. Now, do some people get over the wall? Yes, but the wall is still an effective obstacle for them to have to overcome. When it comes to our porn addiction recovery, we have to put up a wall. We have to put up the wall. It doesn't always stop things, but it's a dang good obstacle. So when it comes to putting up the wall, you want to put filters, restriction codes, screen time codes, block access, remove devices, etc. That in any way that you can access this material. Okay, anything that allows you to access this material, you want to remove it. You want to put a restriction code on it. And you can even take it a step further by, if you're willing to tell a trusted person about it, they can have your screen time code, or they can set your screen time code or whatever code you need, your restriction code, and prevent you from, reinstalling or taking something back off or anything like that. So there are some great filter services and things like that. We're not going to delve too deep into that. The one I personally use is Covenant Eyes, but there are many others out there. So that is putting up the wall. Now, this isn't foolproof. This is not foolproof, meaning if you really want to get past the wall, you can get past the wall. You can climb over a wall. You can lay siege to a wall. You can get past the wall, but it's a tough obstacle. You have to do a lot to get through it. So, and that's the whole point of it, right? Just removing that access so that you don't have ready, quick access to it. Because when it comes to this process, and especially when we get to the tools a little bit later in the steps, time is of the essence, right? And I say it's of the essence in a good way, in a positive way, as in if we can put time between that urge to act out and actually doing it, even that gives time, even that gives space and time to think about what you're doing and use an appropriate tool as well, which we'll get to. So that's the second step, putting up the wall. So we've talked about determining addiction and putting up the wall. That's step 2. The third step is to identify your triggers. Identify your triggers. Now, your triggers are people, this is the definition, people, places, things, or situations that lead you to want to act out. Some of my personal triggers are being alone with access to pornography, high stress situations, or knowing that I'm going to deal with high stress situations, and very strong emotions in general, right? That can be extreme excitement or extreme sadness or sorrow. So those are some examples of mine, right? What about you? What are some of your triggers? So let's take some time. I'm going to stop my sharing here, and I'm going to turn up some music for you. We're going to take a little bit. We're going to take 1 minute. I want you to write out your triggers. So get a piece of paper, or you can do it in your phone. I want you to write out your triggers, okay? I'm going to share my sound. Set a timer for a minute to it. I'm still here, you all, just watching my timer. We've got about 30 seconds. Write out any triggers that you could think of. Any person, place, thing, or situation that makes you want to act out. 15 seconds. All right, we're back at it. Let me share my screen again. We're gonna keep it moving. All right, let's get back to it. All right, so that's it for that step. Identify your triggers or ID your triggers. So just a recap, step one is to determine addiction. Figure out, do you have a pornography addiction? Second step is for you to put up the wall. The third step is to ID your triggers. Then we come to our fourth step, which are called blockers. Put up blockers. Blockers. Blockers are boundaries. It's just another word for boundaries. I just made the word blockers to put my own name to it. But blockers are boundaries that you put into place ahead of time to prevent or fight off each of your triggers. So I always think of blockers as like a shield, right? If you're fighting a battle. Not that the goal here is to fight an addiction. It's not. We're not fighting anything. That's not our goal here. But still, I use this analogy because that shield is used to block. And then that fighter, that warrior, also usually has another weapon like a sword or mace or something like that. And I'm still on that medieval theme, pardon me there. But when it comes to your recovery, right? What are some examples of blockers? Well, if you think of your triggers, or maybe you've written down one or maybe two triggers, look at those triggers. What are some things, or what is something that you can put into place to prevent that trigger from happening or to automatically fight it off or keep it away? Let me give you some examples. Being alone with access is a trigger for me, right? So what is a blocker that I put into place? Well, part of it is putting up the wall, removing access, right? But you can still, get around that if you try hard enough and if you allow that to occur, right? Yeah, so you can still get around a blocker, but also I do two other things. Number one, I try not to be alone too much. Okay, or three things. I try not to be alone too much. I keep a steady schedule that I follow. So I always have something to do, even if I am alone. I have some things planned out that I can do. And then I stay accountable. I have some accountability partners, and I tell them that I am alone at the moment. I'm physically at home by myself, and even doing that is helpful. So that's a blocker that I put in place to fight off or keep away that particular trigger. I got the wall up, so I put up the wall. I blocked all access. I stay accountable. I follow a pretty consistent schedule, and whatever else I said, I forget already. I'm human, right? But those are some things that I do. That's an example. Now, high stress situations, I put together a plan, a few steps that I do. In fact, I have a plan called a spiral plan. What does that mean? Fancy name for saying spiral means I'm feeling super duper negative. It could be super duper stressed, super duper sad. I'm just feeling very negative and down at the moment. And I have a few things that I do that I automatically do to kind of fight off that feeling, for lack of a better word, right? Or process that. And, those include things like meditation. I do a couple of exercises, like physical exercises, and I do some writing in my journal as well. So you have to come up with at least one blocker for each trigger. It's a start. Now, you might have more triggers to write, more blockers to write out, but think of a couple of blockers for your trigger, at least one for each one. What is something you can put in place, a boundary, that a blocker that can prevent this from occurring? Now, it does get more in depth than that, because you have close blockers and then you have far blockers. Far blockers prevent you from even getting to the trigger in the first place, way ahead of time. Close blockers are like things that are right then and there. I'm talking like get up from your desk or put your phone down and walk away. Those are close blockers. So there's more to it than that. It gets more in depth, but this is the simplified version. All right. So we're going to give another minute. I'll stop my sharing and let's get some music here. Turn off my camera. I'm going to share my sound. I give 1 minute to write out at least one blocker for each boundary. Cutting on the timer now. Got about 13 more seconds. All right, and we are back. We are back. So hopefully that time was helpful for you. We're gonna keep it moving. So you definitely want to put up your blockers. So if we recap again, step 1, determine addiction. Step 2 is to put up the wall. Step 3 is to identify your triggers. Step 4 is to put up blockers. Then we come to step 5. Step 5 is to get accountable. Get accountable. Get accountable. We want to, accountability is so important. And it's almost, for lack of a better word, a buzzword, so to speak, because we see it all over the place at work. You might hear it at home or see it in books. Get accountable. What does that mean though? And why is that so helpful when it comes to porn recovery, porn addiction recovery? So when it comes to this process, first and foremost, it's important to find an accountability partner. An accountability partner is someone, and it can be simple, you all. It's just someone that will check back in on you at predetermined intervals on something that you said you wanted them to check in on. What that can be, hey, I'm going to send a picture of my right thumb every day. I'm just making something up. My right thumb, sending a picture, right? If I don't do that by 7 o'clock every day, text me, call, whatever. That's an example. And of course, that's an extreme kind of funny example, but that's an example of accountability. And that happens on different levels, different scales, and it looks different at different places. It looks different at work than it might at home. But still, when it comes to our recovery, you want to find an accountability partner. This is preferably someone that is also struggling with this addiction. Whoa, you may have never heard that before, right? What do you mean somebody who's struggling? The reason that it's helpful to get an accountability partner who is also looking to get his or her addiction under control is, or his, because we're talking to my millennial men here, is because when you support someone else and help them and call them out on things and you hold them accountable as they request it to be, it helps you as well. I'm a corporate trainer in my corporate job. I'm a corporate trainer, right? And we always tell our learners, or I always tell my learners, hey, y'all, if you're in a small group with a partner or partners and somebody asks a question, if you know the answer the question, because it only helps you. It helps you and the person, because you answer their question, and you're able to kind of refresh that information in your mind. So that's how accountability works. It really helps both parties involved on both ends. Not only that, the statistics, the numbers show that accountability is helpful. In fact, there's an article, which I'll pull up on my other screen. Well, actually, I'll pull it over for you all to see. So actually, never mind. No, I won't, because all my bookmarks and stuff. But I'll read an excerpt from this article. I'll read a little excerpt or a little example from this article. And it's funny because my wife and I were talking about this literally the other day. We're talking about accountability, and she had gone through a course at work that kind of talked about the same thing. It says, according to, what screen is, there we go. It says accountability is a well-known construct that is proven to make you vastly more successful. According to an American Society of Training and Development study, you are 95% more likely to succeed by simply directing accountability to a third party. Research shows that even a little accountability produces measurable results when it comes to reaching your goals. And here's the bread and butter of this. And this article is available if you want it from me. Please just email me at millennialmanp as in Papa at gmail.com. I'll be glad to give you this article. Okay, I have it saved. It's yours. But it says, if you just have a goal, which could be recovery from porn addiction, you are 10% more likely to complete it. Pretty good. That's a good little boost, just even having a goal. If you consciously decide to do it, like if you make a decision, I'm going to do it, this is it, and even in your head, there's a 25% more chance that you'll complete it. If you assign a timeline to it, like if you put measurable steps in time to it, like after, I plan to do this in 3 years. In the first year, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. A, first quarter, B, second quarter, C, third quarter, D, fourth quarter. Assigning a timeline to it adds 40% more chance. Making a plan, that's just assigning a timeline. Making a plan, which is kind of what I went over earlier, so my apologies on that. Assigning a timeline is just putting a time stamp on when you want things done. Making a plan is 50% more chance. Committing to someone else, now we get into accountability. Committing to someone else, telling a trusted friend or, sorry you all, family member or whoever you trust as your accountability partner. It just says committing to someone else, so I guess it could be anyone. If you just commit to someone else, tell someone, I'm going to do this, that's a 65% higher chance to complete it. It's telling someone else, committing to someone else. And then here's the one we've been looking for. Weekly, consistent check-ins with that someone. So if you have weekly, consistent check-ins, it doesn't even say how. It just says weekly, consistent check-ins. It could be text, it could be call, from reading this article here. It could be anything. It just says weekly, consistent check-ins with your accountability partner, or with that someone, is what the article says. 95% more likely to complete it. Wow. Weekly. that doesn't say daily, it says weekly. Now, I do daily check-ins with my accountability partners, and it's been extremely successful for me and for them as well. But just a weekly consistent check-in, 95% additional chance. So getting accountable is huge, you all. Having an accountability partner, it is huge and it's extremely helpful. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Jay, what if I don't have anybody around me that's struggling with this or anything like that? Like you're saying, I said preferably, number one, preferably someone that's also struggling with this. My first accountability partner was actually my first therapist that I went to back in 2016. So I say that to say, really, if someone is willing to be your accountability partner, they can be your accountability partner, right? But it's just a preference. It's preferable for that someone to also be in recovery as well. So that is the next step, get accountable. All right, we're coming up on the end here. Second to last step. Second to last step, use your recovery toolkit. Now, I teach various tools that are useful for different situations. Here's a list of them. And you may have your own tools that you use to process through or cope with things, positive tools. There are some that are all over the place, like journaling. I list some on here: breathing, deep breathing, or a box breathing / deep breathing, physical exercise. Those are some really good things. A morning routine is helpful. But when we're talking specific to recovery and what I like to call a recovery toolkit, there are specific tools, specific exercises that help at specific times and with specific things. And we want to use the right tool at the right time, right? You wouldn't want to use, for example, a screwdriver to hammer in a nail. Could you do it? Yes, but it's a lot of extra work. So you want to start using some of your recovery toolkit, whatever that may be. Maybe you have your own tools. Here are a few that I like. The morning routine is very helpful. This is helpful for basically preparing your mindset, your emotional bank account, so to speak, or your emotional account, as I like to call it. Your emotional account, your mental account. Your morning routine is big in really preparing the whole you, the holistic you for the day. Starting your day with something consistent, even if it's something small. Well, of course, we're not going to get too in depth on it now, but your morning routine is very helpful. It anchors you for your day. It prepares you, so to speak, for your day because you've already gone through a routine of sorts. You may have already exercised. You may have already done your self-care, some self-care, right? And the morning routine in itself is self-care. You may have already meditated. I mean, there are so many things that are helpful. The morning routine is amazing for preparing you for the stressors of your day before they even happen. Your feelings ID. This is a quick exercise that you can do. What this does is this helps to start to put a name to feelings. You know, my son likes to listen. I think it's my son, maybe my daughter as well. But they like to listen to this song called "You Have to Name It to Tame It," and such a great song. It's a kid's song talking about putting a name to the feelings so that you can address it. You can tell a grown-up about it or whatever it might be. We have to identify feelings too, even as adults. The thing is that if you've been struggling with a pornography addiction, somewhere along the way, you most likely, especially millennial men who, well, that's a whole nother video. That's not for now. But you're already probably struggling with identifying emotions. You have feelings, but they're not your base level. They're not necessarily the real true you, because what they are they're the feelings are coming from the you, the thoughts are coming from the you that is struggling with this pornography addiction. So a big part of the recovery process is being able to put names to feelings. And this feelings ID exercise really helps with that. And it also helps to establish a baseline for your how you feel on a day-to-day basis. It's very helpful exercise. Um, and how it goes is you write on a journal or piece of paper, and you do this for three different emotions, three feelings. You say, I feel, and you put whatever the word is that comes to mind. If you need to get a emotion wheel from the internet, that's fine as well, especially in the control stages of your process, your journey. And you say, I feel this. The next sentence, you say, I first remember feeling whatever that feeling is when, and you think back to, and this is not I didn't make this up. This is something that helped, that was given to me, that I had to do or I got to do through my recovery, for my recovery coaching that I went through. So this exercise is helpful because it really starts you to identify what these feelings are. And if you can identify what they are, you can handle them accordingly. You might handle sorrow different than depression, or you might handle just being a little sad differently than you would feeling melancholy. So it really helps. The beer test is something that comes from a book. I'm not going to get too in depth on this, but it's a book called Breaking the Cycle. Dialoguing is very helpful. This exercise is very helpful for just identifying what is the problem here. It really allows you to go deep within yourself and kind of get to the root of, not necessarily the true root cause, but it lets you go deeper and figure out, why am I doing some of the things that I'm doing? So the beer test and dialoguing both come from the same book, Breaking the Cycle. They have been exercises that I've used. They've been extremely helpful. The feeling fact exercise is very good for dealing with strong emotions and strong feelings. So you're really super excited, super happy, like euphoric, or really sad or angry, or extremely irritated. Feeling fact exercise helps with that. And how this one works is, you get a piece of paper, same, or a journal. I recommend a recovery journal, and you write feeling on one line and fact on the next line under it. In the feeling line, you just put what you think about whatever situation that made you mad or sad or really happy. Like, this person said that I need to look back over this work again. That frustrated me. Like, I'm the best worker here. Why do they say I need to look back over this? They think I'm not competent. And I'm making something up, you all. That's the feeling. You put that on the feeling line. The fact is this. The fact is, you step outside of the situation. Whether you need to take a little time, that's fine. But step back from the situation and look at only the facts of it. Only the facts. And when you look at the facts of the situation, it'll tell you, well, the person told me to look over the work. It's possible they want it to be as accurate as possible. It probably doesn't have anything really to do with me personally, which most likely it doesn't. However, I'm not going to get too in depth because your situations are specific to you, but probably doesn't have anything to do with me. So and so, just some facts about the situation. They didn't say anything else. They just asked if I could check the work. That's no problem. Yes, I can do that factually. Right? So that's a feeling fact exercise. That actually gets you rational and outside of that strong emotion. Even if it's for a short time, it's extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. Then box breathing / deep breathing. These are just helpful to really anything. These help with like anxiety, fear. And they can just help calm you down in general. They're almost like a mini meditation. So these are some of the tools in the recovery toolkit, right? So to recap, before we get to our final step, step 1 is to determine addiction. Step 2, put up the wall. Step 3 is to identify your triggers. Step 4 is to put up blockers. Step 5 is to get accountable. Step 6, use your recovery toolkit. And then the final step is to move from control to recovery. Move from control to recovery. So, I'm a fan. I'm actually a fan of different recovery programs. I think that different strokes for different folks, right? One program may be effective for, Johnny over here, but maybe I'll say like Celebrate Recovery. I'm just picking something out of my head. Celebrate Recovery might be good for Johnny, but the 12-step program might be good for Jacob, right? Maybe NoFap is your key, right? There are different ways, there are different paths to this process, but I'll say this. Many of the programs out there get it confused, and I'm not talking about any particular one. I'm just saying many programs, including ones that I've studied throughout my time in school for this, many of the programs, they really focus on, they have a huge or more so focus on control, getting control of the addiction, more so than recovery. Now, what's the difference? You might be thinking, well, don't I need to get control of my addiction? The answer is yes, you do. We do, right? But control can happen at the same time as recovery. They're two different things. Addiction control is having things in place that keep you away from porn. That's putting up the wall, having your blockers up, restriction codes, things like that. You can almost think of it as running away from porn. At simple version. Not saying that you're fearful, like running away scared. You're just moving away from it, like running away from it. It's way back there in your rear view. You want to keep it back there. Addiction recovery is having things in place that move you towards the best version of yourself. I want you to think to yourself, what would your life be like? Take maybe 10 seconds. Think to yourself, what would life be like if you didn't struggle with this addiction? What have you missed out on? Right? I thought of that myself several times. I think about it now. I feel several emotions: sadness, some relief, right? Because there are some things that might have been negative in my life, more negative or worse in my life, if I had a, I guess, typical experience during my coming of age years. And that's all I'll say about that. I won't get too in depth. This isn't a sermon or a seminar or anything. But what was lost? What did you miss out on? Recovery is about getting those things back so that you can be the best version of yourself. Or maybe you don't want those things anymore. Maybe you used to have a dream of, being a singer, and you lost that, or you used up all your time, or a lot of time, not all of your time, but a lot of time watching porn throughout your whatever 20s and early 30s. And you're like, well, now I'm 35 and, I never chased that dream, but I don't really want that anymore. Well, what do you want to do? You can move towards that. So that's what recovery is. And we have to have control because, see, here's the thing. We can't just go towards the things we want to be our best self. Like, well, we can, but this addiction is going to be always in the back of your mind. It's always going to be there in the back of your mind if you try to go for these things without at least gaining some control over it, right? So we want to make sure we get control, and this process typically takes about, I'd say, 90 days or so, give or take, right? Everyone's different. I can't really give you an exact timeline, but I would say around 90 days has been my experience throughout my years of having fellow people in recovery, and through just helping people. It's about 90 days or so that they gain a good control over their addiction, right? And there's specific process and tools and things like that we'll get more in depth on at another time. But after that, getting the addiction under control, then it's a great idea, if you haven't already done so, to start your recovery process. Many times these can be done simultaneously, but the recommendation is definitely to get at least a little control under your belt. So at least like a week or two of consistent following the steps. Okay. So that's what we want to do. And then recovery is just getting to that best life, going after what you want or what you've always wanted, and uh, becoming. That's a never ending journey. Not that you're always going to be in recovery, but you're always going to be uh, living your best life or going for your best life, right? Either you're living your best life, you're enjoying what you have, you're okay, or you're moving towards the best version of yourself. There's no in between, right? So this is the final step. Really enjoyed talking with you all tonight. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube to Millennial Man PRN Recovery. There's no O in that. Or you can type at Millennial Man Porn Recovery with no O in it. Either one will pull up our YouTube channel, and boom, subscribe. We put out free content every single week. There'll be something. This recording will go up, of course, with no faces or anything in it. But this recording will go up and as well, so that other millennial brothers out there will be able to see it and have access. And man, the same event's gonna happen, man, in Q2 of this year. So, if you have any friends that are struggling, send them this way. I'm gonna be going through the same material with them. Hey, might even be new and improved. You never know. We just keep getting better, right? So with that, man, I've enjoyed my time with you all. I hope you got something out of this. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that notification bell. And with that, again, you all, I'm Jay Bryan. This is Millennial Man Porn Recovery. Y'all have a great one. Peace.